Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wizard Sunday stream. This is the most professional stream on the internet for Sundays. What can I say? I am the real-life fake wizard, and I'm out of breath because I realized I didn't have any water, so I had to run across my place here and grab some bottles of water. This is going to be a great day. And I'm very excited for this. I see a lot of people in chat. I'm going to go over what we're doing in a minute. So here's the deal. I made a mistake last stream we did, and I've got to answer some of these super chats that I left unanswered last week. That's the first thing we're going to do. So, I'm going to pull these up here. Where did they go? Where'd my starred chat go? Oh, it reset them. Oh, that's okay, because I took screenshots in case it reset them, because I am the most professional streamer. Let me pull these up here. We got to answer these questions first. All right, Sunday Wizardry, and then I took my. Got to find the. This is the most professional stream. Son of a bitch, they're gone. I'm gonna have to pull these up. No, because I saved them to a different folder. I saved them to the screenshots, and I saved them to the stream photos right here. Beautiful. Let's go. Put them on screen. Window right here. Boom. Okay. Let's go ahead, zoom these in. So this is the impromptu answering super chats that were not answered last stream. Okay. What are your thoughts on the Real Game Awards? My friends, I'm very excited for the Real Game Awards and where they're going to take that. I did an entire stream covering that. We watched the whole thing together. I provided commentary the whole time. Our guest for today was on that show, and it was pretty good. I gave my thoughts then. The entire stream is available over on the archive channel, the Fake Wizard Streams channel. You can watch the whole thing there. I gave full thoughts. I gave some commentary, what I would love to see Craig and the Side Scrollers team do for the next time around, just from a business perspective of things that I think could really help the Real Game Awards grow. So I'm optimistic. I want more competition in the marketplace, because more competition in the marketplace means everyone has to get better. So having Craig and the Side Scrollers team do what they are doing is a really great thing. Whether you love it or not, it is a good idea for there to be competition. That's my initial take right there. See, I have to make sure we answer these. I don't want to be that guy that's like, well, you didn't answer my super chat. And I'm like, well, crap, I didn't. No, we did. And we'll start off this show doing it too. All right, let me take that down. There is one more from the same person. Let's pull this up. What are your thoughts? Nope, that's not it, because I shared the wrong one. Most professional stream on the internet. Share the window, and it's this right here. Thoughts about the comic book industry dying. I think with any industry, especially with the way that we live now, with a lot of digital access and a lot of the digital age that we live in, a lot of things have changed. Watching the comic book industry die because of the 5 people ruining entertainment that I talk about in all of my videos. And who are they? Influencers, journalists, corporate executives, marketing professionals, and writers. Those are 5 people ruining every entertainment industry. That is what is happening with the comic book industry. Those 5 people have come in, and then you put on top of that social media, digital access, video games, the accessibility to media that is going to take up your time. And it's like, well, that's going to radically affect the comic book industry. I mean, you got to think about it. Going to the comic book store is a big ask. Getting people off their butts, off the couch to go to do something is a big ask. So then, all right, so now on top of it, you got to get somebody to travel there. Well, they have to be going to purchase something that's worth purchasing. And if the products themselves are just not good anymore, can we say we're surprised that people aren't going and shopping for comic books anymore? That's my take on it. Those are my thoughts on it there. And so with that, that is going to close off this opening segment answering your questions. Again, you are watching the most professional stream right now. I am the Real Life Fake Wizard. This is Sunday Wizardry number 30, and today is pretty special because we have somebody joining right now in a moment. I'm just going to introduce the topic, and then we are going to be joined by Archcast, and we are going to be talking about gatekeeping. This is a pretty big topic, and it's been a pretty big week, I'd say, for both of us as far as the topic of gatekeeping, because we both had different takes and different videos that went out. Although I think his is kind of similar to mine in the aspect of it was a response video to my video. I put out a gatekeeping video detailing my thoughts on gatekeeping, the term, and I came from a very, I'll say, centrist to left-sided mindset with my video. That's where the positioning of my video came from. And Arch put out a video response offering rebuttals to my points. And I have to say, in a lot of cases, I agree with a lot of the things he said. And so if this was any other content creators, there would probably be a lot of hate going back and forth. There would be fights. I mean, you look around and all I see is everybody fighting over the tiniest and smallest things all the time. And if you've watched my channel before, you know that I prefer that we can disagree, and I prefer that we could talk. So, like, and not to have a debate where we're collecting points, not to have a struggle session. It's like, no, actually, Arch made some really interesting points. Why don't we get together, talk about this, offer some definitions, go through, because I asked questions in my video, and then I inferred on what those answers would be. Let's go through it together and see if we can't come to some kind of a mutual understanding. Because, and I even said this to Arch myself offline, off stream. I think we agree 85% of the time. Like 85% of the time we agree. And if we could agree 85% of the time, then that remaining 15% really gets choked up to reasonable minds can differ. And if we can do this stream and come to a position where we're like 85% on the same page, I feel like that's going to be great because we're all going to learn something. And then that means two things. We've learned something, but also we're providing value to you and you listeners out there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and welcome today's guest to Sunday Wizardry on. Arch, how we doing today?
Hello. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Just bouncing around, trying to keep up with this YouTube thing, to making content. I mean, I've been doing it for a few months now, and but how long have you actually been doing the content creation?
Well, that started with my Arch Warhammer channel, which, God, that is old now.
Back in the day, then.
Yeah, like it must be coming up on 10 years, I think, like a decade of this.
So with this channel, I'm pushing 8 months, but I've been back and forth. I did TikTok for a while. I did Dungeons and Dragons TikTok. And then I was doing D&D campaigns, but that's not conventional content creation. You're just playing D&D and streaming it. So you're really not in the thick of it. But yeah, it's an interesting ride. And so, but I think the idea that you have people being able to agree, disagree, talk things out, and this is a really good topic. So what I'd like to do is let you introduce yourself to the 6.5 people watching this who don't know who you are. And then we'll get into the topic. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
See, that's always the most difficult part. I am Arch. That has led to me being threatened to be sued by Games Workshop, and introduction's always the difficult part. I've never been... How do you do an introduction? Like, hello.
Well, I don't know. I just waffled through the opening of the show, so so I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm professional at all with it.
I have to think of like a sales pitch or something. I talk on the internet.
Yeah. We talk about our ideas. Works for me.
Yes, that is what we do. That is the only thing you can do. I'll present your point of view and see if anybody agrees.
So then let's get right into that. So Arch, what would you say is your borderline definition of gatekeeping?
Borderline definition. Are we speaking as to the intent of gatekeeping or the more like in the spirit of the thing?
Well, that's a great point. Let's go with the intent first. What's the intent of gatekeeping?
The intent of gatekeeping can be summarized as join the hobby, come inside, change the hobby, stay outside.
Who are the ones that you think are doing that?
The gatekeeping part or the changing part?
The changing part.
Oh, well, there it gets complicated again. So let's take... are you familiar with Games Workshop at all? 40K.
So I'm not a Warhammer player at all. I've sworn off playing Warhammer because my bank account doesn't want to deal with that.
Fair enough.
But yes, I am familiar with the company.
So, for Warhammer, it used to be a fairly niche hobby, of course, like most of these hobbies were back in the day. It grew to be far more popular relatively recently. I'd say about 6-7 odd years ago was when it began starting to break into the mainstream, largely in part to Total War Warhammer, the collaborative project that they had with Creative Assembly.
Right.
This was when it started getting noticed by political forces. See, oh god, how deep do we go here? Does the name Gramsci tell you anything?
I've heard the name.
Right. So Gramsci is a very fascinating guy. Antonio Gramsci, a socialist from the mid-last century of the Italian persuasion, because socialism had a bit of a... Oh, God, we are really getting into the wilds here, but if we're going to go like down deep... socialism had a bit of a crisis of faith, because originally the idea was that once the peasantry, the working class, realized that they were being exploited, obviously they would begin to rise up, right? They would overthrow the bourgeoisie because they were oppressing them. Obviously that was going to happen. And then the years went by, and it didn't happen. The revolution of the proletariat just wasn't happening at all. So there are a lot of people that start wondering, why isn't it happening? Why? They're being exploited. They're being used by the evil bourgeoisie. Can't they see that? We're telling them. And the theory that Gramsci came up with was that we had normalized the system of oppression, and that became then known as generalized Western values in his worldview. If everything around us was Western values, e.g. oppression, then you would not recognize that you are being oppressed because it is just normal. It's breathing air, drinking water, etc. And so to begin to fight against that and then allow the inevitable workers' revolution to manifest, you would first need to change the very fundament of society. You would need to upend the worldview of everyone to the point where they no longer saw the oppression as the norm. He wrote several lengthy books on these in slightly coded language because he was arrested by the other socialists of the fascist variant, who didn't like his ideas very much at all. And this has become the core of a lot of the political agitation we see from the left today, an attempt to upend the current political ideology and everything that is normal. They want to try and change as much as possible. This is not really a conscious thing for the large part. It has been baked very deeply into the ideology of progressivism, which is Antonio Gramsci's greatest achievement, baking all of these very radical notions into very simple concepts like, well, we just want justice, social justice. I'm like, okay, well, everybody likes justice, right? Of course.
Right.
But it also is defined in such a way that there can never be an end to social justice. There's always an inequality. Therefore, we must continue to upend society more and more and more and more and more until we reach the Gramscian ideal of inverting everything.
Right. That's something I say often. It's like, where do you draw the line on certain things?
Yes.
That's one of them.
Yes, because drawing the line is where you differentiate an idea from an ideology. Because we can all agree it's like racism bad. Yeah, no, you shouldn't be racist. But then it becomes, okay, but what do we do about racism? And you have like the Ibrahim Khans of the world saying, well, the solution to racism is more racism, but this time against white people. Okay, I don't know if I agree now. And so it
Kind
continues.
of going a different way.
Yeah. And I lay this out because it highlights the subversive nature of the current year progressive ideology. They wish to change pretty much everything. Change in and of itself is a goal in their minds. So they do this by getting into things that are popular. This was another one of Gramsci's ideas, that you need to seize the popular culture, whether that be video games, movies, television series, etc. And you need to make everything political. That's how you seize them, by going, okay, well, this thing is political because A, B, C, and D. And therefore, now that you have defined it as political, it is okay to start talking about politics in the context of that thing. So, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a dumb show about a teenage girl slaying vampires, is political because the vampires represent the abusive upper classes sucking the proletariat dry. Therefore, Buffy is the hero of the people protecting common class. Okay.
And it's coming back.
Yes. As like, okay, absurd, but that's all you need. So long as you have managed to insert a political element, it is now political, and you can talk about it in political terms. This was what we did not understand originally when all of this started talking about. When back in the Anita Sarkeesian days, when she comes in and goes like, your video games are sexist. We were like, they're not sexist. I don't understand.
Right.
And we tried to argue that point. Whereas what was actually happening was what she was saying, I am making this political. And we then answered by going, okay, let's talk about the politics. Once this then happens, once this process has begun, you then see what happened with Warhammer begin very slowly. Like it took 6-7 years, where to begin with, Warhammer was for everyone with a fat enough wallet to afford their ridiculous prices of plastic and paint. And beyond that, Warhammer had no standards for who could play it whatsoever. Then, 5 years ago, the rather infamous Warhammer is for everyone thing released. I'll put it in the private chat in case you're not familiar with it. Where it basically, they made a scree saying that our fantasy setting is grim and dark, but that is not a reflection of who we are or how we feel the real world should be. We will never accept nor condone any form of prejudice, hatred, or abuse in our company or in the Warhammer hobby. We will continue to diversify the cast of characters we portray through miniatures, art, and storytelling so everyone can find representation and heroes they can relate to. So diversity and representation are by now actual left-wing terms. We know what these means. They do not mean what they do mean in the English language.
And this is an official document from Games Workshop?
Yes, they were the ones who released it. And then they wrap it up by saying, and if you feel the same way, whoever you are, we're glad you're part of the Warhammer community. If not, you will not be missed. Ooh. So suddenly, there is now a sign on the door saying, if you agree, welcome in. If you don't, stay out.
This is interesting. See, even I come from Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons. So anything that has to do with Warhammer is pretty new to me, unless it's Total War Warhammer. Yes. I've tried, basically, that's why I'm trying to summarize this in generalistic terms. Right. But this is important because this is very important because I want to understand, and I want everybody watching this to understand what your point of view is as far as where the gatekeeping comes from. Like why is this a big massive movement? Because I'll eventually talk about like my video's intent later on is slightly different, but coming from a similar playing field. Yes, because this then is the beginning of actual gatekeeping. This is the left wing moving into an area and going, okay, this is political. We wish to change it because that, again, is the point of our movement and the Gramscian principle. And we want to move out those who oppose us because now we're talking politics. Now it's not a hobby anymore. Now it's not a shared experience. Now it's me versus you and everybody else. And so the sign appears on the door for the first time ever. If you agree, come in. If you don't, stay out. And the only way to resist this is basically to pick up their own tools and go like, okay, no, I don't agree. If you are declaring war, as they are here, then I'm going to declare war back. No, my standard will be join the hobby,
change the hobby, leave. So I'm going to continue gatekeeping now as well. This is why whenever I've talked to a progressive about this, they've agreed about gatekeeping, but we've differed on the targets.
So where typically are their targets?
Well, I had a debate on this a few months ago, or maybe it was a year ago now. I remember for goldfish. Where a guy contacted me on Twitter and said, I'm going to argue against you on gatekeeping. Debate me, bro. I'm like, okay, cool, let's do it. And we started the conversation. I'm like, okay, what is your argument against gatekeeping? Why don't you like gatekeeping? And he's like, well, I believe we need to gatekeep the fascists. All right. Well, there we are. We agree that gatekeeping is good. You want to gatekeep the fascists. I wish to extend the definition of fascist to socialist in general. And that is where the disagreement really lies.
Right. So that then it comes down to political ideology.
Yes, because that's what introduced it. The gatekeeping wasn't begun by the nerds and geeks in the hobby originally. Because I remember when I first got into these geekdom things, you were overjoyed when you met somebody else who was into this. Like, holy shit, you like this too? Fantastic,
right.
Let's talk about it. And you wanted to tell other people about it. You were interested. Like, yeah, no, definitely come and play. It's amazing. And then we brought in the wrong people who then didn't do that and instead went, well, I don't like you in this hobby. You're going to need to get out.
So if the company themselves are saying that they're going to radically change things, what's the best line of defense to combat that? As far, just from your perspective.
The only way to combat it is cultural change. Because at the end of the day, as individuals, we have infinitesimally little power compared to a corporation.
Right.
Even if you create like a boycotting movement, for example, it requires a massive
Cancel
amount
Disney
of...
Plus.
Yeah, definitely do. And boycott Warner Plus as well, incidentally. But it requires a lot of coordination, right? You need to mobilize. In the case of Disney, like tens of thousands. Like I think they had like 7 million subscribers.
The 700,000 just dropped off.
Yes.
But they've got, but here's what, just a tangent on that. They're pooling Hulu and ESPN to make it look like Disney Plus is way more successful than it actually is. So I could say they had a 700,000 drop off, and I've seen in the comments, it's like, yeah, but they reported they still have 150 million users. It's like, yeah, because they're pooling all the numbers for the streaming business.
150
but we don't.
But
that's
still,
a lot of people.
It's an enormous number, right? So
right.
If you were going to try and boycott them, you'd need to organize millions of fucking people. It's just
right.
It ain't happening. But when you try to change the culture, you are trying to make the tactics of the progressive unpopular. And since by definition, again, the Gramscian version, the progressive must change everything, you can actually have a very specific thing that you can point to and go, that's what I'm against. Like the Acolyte, for example. And now you have a specific example. You have a specific argument, and you've got a bad product you can hold up for people and go, this thing bad. I can explain to you why this thing bad. We need to change this thing. And then that will slowly, over the course of the last 10, 15 years, begin to seep into the public mainstream once enough of us do it. This way, we don't have to organize everything. We just need to put forward our opinions. And if enough people agree and enough people pick up the cause, and enough people talk about it, sooner or later, the corporations will begin to take notice due to dips in sales. Because we'll go, this thing bad, don't watch this thing. And that has now happened with Disney Plus, with the latest Skeleton Crew, which I watched. It's not a bad show, but nobody watched it.
I can't bring myself to do it. I just can't do it. Acolyte hurt too much. I didn't think I was. But okay, so it comes down to gatekeep with your wallet.
In essence, but on a far grander scale, because gatekeep with your wallet usually implies an attempt to boycott directly. Whereas this is boycott with everybody else's wallets. I'm not boycotting with mine. I'm boycotting with Tim, Tom, Bill, Ted, everybody else that I can reach.
So calling people with your reach, telling everybody to also boycott as well.
Yes, by pointing out the cultural problem surrounding it. So, again, I don't like the term voting with your wallet because it feels too atomized, if you get my drift.
Yeah, it's that's what I talk about on my content all the time. Is my catchphrase is cancel Disney Plus. So like if people click on my profile, that's my banner is cancel. I'm the cancel Disney Plus guy. So I know that's not going to be a mainstream message, but I don't care. My whole point is how can I get people to start creating new things on their own? Because I want these companies to crumble. I don't want them to come back. Like, I don't want them to say that they're sorry. Oh, we're sorry. It's like that South Park meme. We're sorry. But they're not actually sorry. They don't give a shit. That's really what part of my message was, seeing that video with you have somebody who's a self-professed activist waking up to the fact that the companies don't care about them. So if I'm able to look at that and without knowing who they are and also knowing that they're not really going to do anything about it, but oh my gosh, wait a second. Is there an inkling for possibility that people wake up, that we can wake more people up to learn that these corporations are not our friends at all? And so that's kind of a position that I definitely hold, that, the corporations are the bad guys. I still have hope for individuals. So that's a little different.
Yeah, and the corporations are the bad guys, but you also got to differentiate what we mean with care here from the progressive perspective. God, we're going to have to get into the weeds again, aren't we? There's a guy. He wrote Jonathan Haidt is his name. He wrote a book called The Righteous Mind. I adore this book because it brings up a very fascinating way of explaining morality, which suggests that we have various new natural taste buds to morality, that we react strongly to certain things because we're kind of programmed to do so. We don't have to think about everything. We don't have to see a baby on fire and go, well, is that a bad thing? It's probably a bad thing, isn't it? Instead, your mind immediately goes, oh my God, it's a baby on fire. No. And one of his moral foundations is care, which is, just caring for other things, wanting to minimize harm, etc. This is something that the progressives have largely weaponized with things like, for example, oh, you don't want to be a racist, do you? And everyone's
I would agree with that.
Of course not. I don't want to be a racist. And this is how they get into the corporations, because they go up to a Disney executive or a boss or a hiring person and goes like, hey, you don't want to be a racist, but there's not enough people of color in this show. Like, I'm not calling you a racist, but, And that immediately creates a very defensive response in the person being accused. Like, no, of course not. Okay, we'll race swap Peter Parker's best friend. Are you happy?
No, not really. Can't say I am. I don't sleep better knowing that they've race swapped or gender swapped almost 100 characters now. I think we're pushing 100 legacy characters at this point.
I remember there was like a meme picture of the ginger genocide with just dozens and dozens of redheaded characters who had been race swapped over the years.
Yes, that's very common, and it's like, oh well, if you observe this, then you're part of the problem. It's like, no, wait a second, that's a lot of characters that you've changed. Has it made things better? Does that improve things? So, but I totally get that. To get back on this aspect, because I think, I had said at the beginning, if we're not going to agree 80, if we could agree 85%, so far I'm thinking it's like 95%, because I really don't have any rebuttals here that push against what you're saying. I agree very much. I think my biggest concern, and I'd like to break it down into 3 channels, and tell me if I'm crazy. 3 channels of people in the gaming space that have to do with this discussion. You've got individuals entering into a comic shop, per se, to play Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer, what have you. Then you have people working to develop the games, which we saw with Dragon Age Veilguard, how that did not work out very well. But then you have the people above those people who are the corporate managers, who are telling them that this is what they want, who are kind of enforcing everything that you just described with focusing on that ideological perspective. which is the target, and who should be gatekept?
Well, the executive groups, which is the guys at the top, most of the time these people are influenced by others because they are in essence the personification of the corporation. The billionaire from LA who owns like 5% of Disney doesn't give a shit about any of this. He's watching his returns on his investment, right? And this managerial class then, of course, takes a lot of advice from various people underneath them, marketing executives, HR people, etc. And for quite a few years, they were looking at like Twitter, Facebook, often very curated forms of social media, and their own education, which tended to be very, very liberal, and go, right, well, social justice is in. That's what the kids want. The kids are woke, so we got to make woke entertainment to appeal to the kids. That was their business rationale that they pushed to their bosses. And for years, the bosses have been told, well, just let the creatives do what they want to do. And so I'm like, okay, fine, do what you need to do. And so they started doing that. And of course, in any such business decision, it takes a very long time to truly know if you're onto something, right?
Right.
So they started this with Disney very slowly, with like the very earliest incarnation would be Finn from the new Star Wars movies, right?
Right.
Now, Finn could and should have been an amazingly interesting character. A turncoat stormtrooper.
They botched it.
Oh, they botched it so hard. And they didn't even botch it. They didn't even understand the task.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, Finn, a turncoat stormtrooper. Okay, how did you become a stormtrooper? How do you feel about fighting against your fellow stormtroopers? Are you mentally distraught by this? Like, you know, you're killing your comrades here. That's got to be hard on you. Instead, we see him at the back of a spaceship firing at them with a heavy blaster, going, ha ha ha, boom, 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 boom. So, oh.
And something else that we missed out on, part of the original lore for Finn is that he was kidnapped as a child. So you had this whole child indoctrination storyline that they also tossed away. I mean, you had unlimited potential. So
much.
And we see that with everything. We see that with every modern franchises. They're squandering the opportunity from actually empowering storytelling, and not the bastardized version of the word empowered, for horrible mistakes. But when it comes down to fighting back and trying to target who's the real enemy here, can we isolate who the problem is? Does it, I guess, would it come down to the people making it with the boots on the ground, or do we target the corporate managers who are signing off on this crap?
It's the ideology overall. Like, unfortunately, there's not a single individual we can point to and go like, that guy. It is the overall ideology that does this. That then infects the countless branches. Like, even Finn is an excellent example of this, right? His actor did his best to portray this character to the best of his abilities, right? The writers probably thought they were trying, but they weren't really given a lot to work with within the confines of the story. So you have a character that could be very interesting, but since he's in essence penciled in as a diversity hire, he's just, okay, well, he's black, that's good enough. Instead of going like, okay, he's a child soldier. How did they indoctrinate him? How does this affect his psyche? How can we build something around him? And so he just becomes a pseudo love interest thing for Rey, and he picks up a lightsaber to be like, hey, he could be a Jedi, and then he isn't. It's like, did you even try? Like, this is why I think that Finn genuinely was a diversity character, because they didn't think about him for 2 seconds.
Right.
And so you have this multi-level problem where there's a large force that is very amorphous and undefinable, pushing in on multiple levels of the corporation. It's suffusing it on so many levels. So it really comes down to, if you want a specific target, it is the old rule, right, from the good old days. Don't talk about religion or politics in the hobby. That would be the best way to target them. So if somebody goes like, oh, but what about the politics? They're like, no, I don't want to hear about that. We're playing Star Wars now. Shut up.
So it comes down to us on our end and what we're doing to combat it.
Yes. I mean, again, the only way to change a cultural opponent is to change the culture. And that is necessarily a very large and floaty definition, because it's difficult to really hammer down to what our counterculture is, especially as right now that the right, quote unquote, is in the ascendance. We're now going to have to actually figure out what our culture opposition is. Because previously we were simply going up, woke bad. Whereas now we have to begin presenting a actually cohesive value system of our own. And we are disagreeing on that. There's been a lot of the puritanical right rearing its head, for example, recently, which I also don't like or agree with.
Right. Yeah, well, we've seen a lot of that even just in the last couple days. All right, so then when it comes down to... Because I want to take it back to my original video. So something I was really trying to hit home, and I've been very clear, especially in the comments on Twitter, I definitely didn't hit the mark with where I wanted to go with this, is that I see that there's a difference between the individual and the corporation. Now, whereas you're talking about the ideology, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I want these corporations to crumble. I want them to crumble. I want them to fall apart. Burn to the ground in Minecraft is what I want to see. And if I can isolate that, if I was to look at this like it's a big war game, the way that I target that is I tell people cancel Disney Plus. Disney is one of the biggest generals in this effort to bastardize storytelling. That's what I'm trying to rescue, is storytelling. And I've noticed that, well, Disney Plus is where they're the most over leveraged. That's where they've put the most money into. It's also where they keep making the biggest mistakes. If you stop watching ABC, nothing happens. If you don't shop on the Disney store, nothing happens. If you stop going to Disney parks, nothing happens, because somebody else is going to be going to those things. Though that's not where they are the weakest. They are genuinely at their weakest point on Disney Plus. So if you can get your friends to cancel that subscription and perhaps have more integrity than to have to watch, like Daredevil was great. I'm not paying to watch Daredevil season 4. Like, I can't bring myself to do it, because this is bigger than that. If you cancel that, if there's enough of a movement, you know, this goes back to that speak with your wallet thing. Well, maybe that's not the greatest term here, but they're for the first time in my, especially doing content of paying attention, Disney Plus is the most vulnerable that one of these massive corporations is right now. If that streaming service goes down, the world changes. All of culture changes.
Yep.
So
you are absolutely correct in that.
That's where I'm like, wait a second. Because I have, and maybe this is, and I do want to get into this because I want to talk about the left side of this discussion, because I spent 4 years listening to that. So it's a little different because I spent so much time doing the D&D TikTok stuff. Made a lot of friends there. I had a lot of discussions with people I wouldn't agree with at all with their moralities, but to still have friends with those people is a little different. I care more about the individual than the organization, but we'll get into that. Yeah, I want to see this Disney Plus thing collapse. That's my goal. So
you want to head
that's
on
my intent,
and I
want to head on a pike. Yes. I want everybody to know. This is what happens when you come at storytelling. This is what happens when you come at culture. The people, you talk to people, it's like, well, we can't do anything about the free market. It's not even free. It's all these corporations own everything. BlackRock owns everything. No, you can fight back. They've overexposed themselves, and then they told us about it. They told us that they're over-leveraged on Disney Plus. They keep pumping out crap. They can't make stuff in time to make up the difference. If enough people got wind of that, you could take them down. You could genuinely take Disney down. It has nothing to do with, oh, well, we didn't go see Captain America. It's like, no, you want the ripple to hit Warner Brothers. You want the ripple to hit gaming. You take out Disney Plus at their most vulnerable point. It's like, that could be amazing.
And Disney Plus is indeed vulnerable, because Disney as a corporation largely survives off nostalgia. That's like their parks are their big earners. And the only reason people go to the parks is because there's like, well, I've got really good memories of Disney.
Yes.
But nobody has any good memories of the recent Star Wars movies or of The Acolyte. And so when you keep hitting them with that, Disney does understand. It takes them years to get the message, but they do eventually go, okay, well, this just isn't popular. We're going to have to do something else.
Right. So that's why I want to ask. It's like, I think there are two different target points, or three different target points, rather. There's three different target points. You have the corporation signing off. You have the people making this crap. But then, and this is where things get a little slippery, at least as far as I've experienced, is that there's individuals who walk in to a comic shop or walk in to play something like Dungeons and Dragons with friends, and those people, we may not share eye to eye on the world, but like you said, you don't talk about religion or politics. And at least I've seen where there's a lot of overextending with people running those games to people that are coming in and don't really know what they're getting into. And so they may sit down and they may get hit with ideology that they may not agree with. And I'm not saying that the person walking in is left-leaning per se. Could be right-leaning. So it kind of goes both ways. It does go both ways. I don't want to create situations where those individuals feel like they can't be part of the hobbies. And I can tell you from watching and listening to the left side, that's where they're coming from. So that's where my video was coming from as well.
Yeah, so individuals being unfairly lambasted for this. Yep, that is a concern. Of course, this is all... I'm about to sneeze very loudly. I'm sorry.
Gesundheit.
There we go. This is, of course, already a thing that is happening. I'll give you a very recent example here. Oh, God, the tweet is still up. Nice. So this is from Jason Bullman, a game designer at Paizo, creator of Pathfinder. And he put out the tweet saying, gatekeeping in TTRPG space is ridiculous. Our hobby is far too small to exclude anyone, no matter the experience or interest level. If you play games, you are a gamer. If you make games, you are a designer. If you like games, you're welcome here, right? That was from 2020. And then the screenshot is him saying, if JD Vance has played Pathfinder, I want him to send his books back. No space for fascists in our games. This is the descent of the progressive, where it's like, oh, everyone is welcome. We should all play games. That's my 2014 position. And then they radicalized quite quickly. And then you arrive at 2024, where it's like, I don't like this guy. I need to keep him out. So the gatekeeping is already happening from the left. All I view that my side, quote unquote, is doing is returning the coin in kind in the hope that they might then go, ow, I didn't like that. It's like, yeah, now you know how I felt.
Right.
But there is also, of course, as you say, the danger of people who have no idea what's going on suddenly being slapped down with like, oh, but I didn't know. It's like, no, shut up. It's political. But I don't understand. Like, can happen, but it's not a perfect system, I guess.
Well, and that's it. And that's why I wanted to have this talk, because I believe that part of my argument in my video was definitely lacking, is that I've played games with people and I've run games with people. I've done shows with people who are polar opposite like ideology. Polar opposite ideology. And we're like, I'm able to get them into character. I'm able to get them to think in character. I'm able to get them to empathize, which is really hard for a lot of people. And it's like you can use these games to do that. And so for me, that's why I care. I care so much more about the individual who I could teach storytelling to, who I could teach empathy to. And I don't give a damn about that. This is like, we see Wizards of the Coast doing this. Radically changing things. Basically every book edition, they have to radically alter something. Burn that company to the ground in Minecraft. Stop buying their shit forever. And I want to inspire people to start making their own stuff. Like, that's where I'm coming from. It's how can I, because storytelling is what's under attack. I think it goes even further, because everything that you described when we started this, I'm like, that's on point. But then when you look at it from the bird's eye view, it's like, not only is it an ideological battle, they're coming after stories. Well, why are they coming after stories? Why is anybody coming after stories? To to change your perception on what it is to be human. Because if the way that we perceive stories changes, then being human beings changes.
Yes,
And so now we have games here like D&D or RPGs where you can learn how to use empathy as a tool. Son of a bitch. We could do that? I didn't know we could do that. I want to do more of that. And how do I teach other people to do that? So that's where I was coming from with the be kind thing. I'm not saying be kind to corporations. I'm saying be kind to the individuals, because I do believe that there is a place where you can breach those discussions, especially in gaming.
There is absolutely a place for that as well, and the actually innocent victims should, of course, be protected wherever possible. But I have also long since arrived at the spot where I no longer care if my enemy burns. In fact, I kind of rejoice now, because I was there in the beginning where we were all arguing like, okay, don't do this, don't institute these tools, don't institute these changes, because eventually your favor will fall, your star will descend from firmament, and your opposition will gain hold of those powers. And they will use them against you exactly like you did. And you won't like it. And they laughed at us like, we will never lose power. And they did so in record time. And now you see people like major political commentators on the left suddenly going, I'm really worried that YouTube will take away my channel. Like, oh, no. It's terrible. Right. Wow. We've only had to worry about that for 10 years now on the right.
Right. Yeah. Say anything out of line, you'll be censored. You could be deplatformed. It's not good. And I could tell, and I see some of the comments rolling in, and I saw the comments on my other on both of our videos where, you know, people say like, you know, you're too kind. I see that coming through. There's discussions of that. I don't know, man. The idea of being able to do these role-playing games, or whether it be Warhammer, even video games, films, like, you can reach people. I feel like you could reach people, and you know, call me whatever you want, but it's like, I still think you can reach people, the individual. I care about reaching the individual. So, and I'm ready to burn down the corporations that have put us in the position that we need to have these discussions on things like gatekeeping. They're the enemies. They're the enemies. Because then it's like you said before, you know, the people doing it came in with the ideology. Where'd that come from? It's like you said before. It's like it came in through universities largely, but where did it come from with them? And you've already exactly. But it's the corporations who are legitimizing it.
Yes, who are buying into it and then being used to legitimize it. Yes.
Right.
Again, it's quite clever. Like, Gramsci, for all his evilness, was a clever guy.
It's an interesting circumstance that we're in. But so let me ask you this then. So if we were to look at like Games Workshop, and if they were to do a complete 180, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm largely open to these corporations. Now, I wouldn't mind if GW burned to the ground, because then my own tabletop game, which I'm working on, will do a lot better. So if they want to shoot themselves in the foot, I'm sure as shit not going to stand in front of them. But I'm also not at the point where I'm like, okay, if you suddenly start making good stuff, I'm just going to attack you for it. Like if they've got a TV series upcoming in like the next 5 years with Henry Cavill, and I adore Cavill. If he manages to make something good, I will say it's good. If it's garbage, I will beat that drum even harder.
It's going to be really bad for him if it's garbage.
It depends on how much creative control he gets, I think.
I would agree to that. His career has already taken too many hits.
Yeah, he made himself deeply unpopular in Hollywood, so they just don't give him work. Yeah, and we all suffer for it. There was even a reel of him as James Bond that leaked out the other day, and he looked great in that stuff. Everybody's still saying, "Oh yeah, Henry Cavill's going to be Bond." I'm like, I don't know if they're going to. Yeah, no chance. I don't think so. They hate him. There's not a fucking chance in hell he becomes Bond.
He's far too polarizing with his opinion because he's too much of a fan.
Yeah, like I guarantee you they wouldn't make him Bond because the producers would be like, I don't want to work with him. Why? Well, he's annoying. He picks on details. Like, but James Bond doesn't drive that kind of car. What is wrong with you?
Right. Yeah, or he wouldn't do that. And that's, I feel like we need more of that though. And I wish we could get more of that, where people coming into these roles or coming into these positions, whether it's like celebrities in Hollywood, or people taking on the job of making something like a Dragon Age Veilguard. I wish we had more people coming in who were coming in with the intent of being honest by the property. And we don't get enough of that. So is there a solution for that? I don't know.
Well, we need to you have a very good point when it comes to the storytelling of being under attack, right?
Yes.
Because this is a issue that we see in many areas right now. Back into the good old days, it was very difficult to get into a creative pursuit because you need to be really passionate because this wasn't popular. If you were making Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, you weren't doing so to be a millionaire. You were playing with your toy soldiers, right? And so this meant that only the people who were truly passionate tried to create something in that sphere. But now that it has become a job, now you have university classes on it. Now they teach game design. They teach game writing. And so you get a lot of people of mediocre talent who doesn't really have the passion, who views this as, in essence, as a 9-to-5. And when they start getting into companies, a lot of them just aren't going to be that good. And when a lot of them also comes in with very fixed ideas of what is moral and immoral, good and wrong, and that usually is rather political, on top of having a very limited set of writing tools, well, you get very formulaic stories that are poorly written and come across as pushing primarily an ideology because they didn't quite think it through and they didn't have the passion to write it properly. Skill, passion, teaching, like all of these come together to create a little bit of a perfect storm. Simply just the amount of entertainment as well. Like, let's say that the amount of skilled people hasn't dropped, right? Because it might not have. But if you're producing 5,000 television shows a year and you've got 100 competent writers, you're in trouble.
It's going to be hard to divvy out who goes to what.
Yeah. And then you've got the writing rooms. Did you pay attention to the writers' strike like last year?
Bad timing. Bad timing to be complaining you want more money and the circumstances they were complaining about when they are producing garbage.
Yes, and one of the things they demanded were writing rooms, basically dictating that, okay, if you're going to run a TV show, I, as the primary writer, need 2 other writers with me. So now you've got one good guy, one great guy who's like, I know how to do this. And you've got 2 other people who slept their way through class, who's sitting opposite this guy and going like, I don't know, dude. What if we just had him kill his horse Roche and laugh about it?
How about no? But, you know, I see that some people in the chat were saying gatekeeping is the solution. And I think what I'm asking is how? How do we do that other than stopping the spend of any money with a company that does it? Like, is there something that I don't know?
Well, the stopping of the spending of the money is the end goal. It's just that the way you do it is more cultural rather than directly economical, because the culture is wider and, in a weird way, easier to affect.
Right. So if I could break it down into a science, gatekeeping should come down to call out problems, but then also stop funding these companies. Is that crazy?
Yes, call out the problems to affect the end of the company's funding, I guess, would be it.
Okay.
Because it is possible. Like, a lot of people mention the impossibility of it, as you said, right? But they're backed up by BlackRock, who manage trillions of dollars. Absolutely. It's a very big task, and it will take years and years and years and years. But as we are seeing right now, it is possible.
Yes. It's possible to be hitting all of the companies like we have been. So you look at the video games, the movies. People aren't going to the movies. People aren't buying the games. That's great. I guess my question is, and this isn't really anything that any of us will have the answer to, is it working, and will it actually make the changes that we're looking for?
Well, we don't know yet. We do know that something is working, right? Because we see the companies reporting loss of subscribers, reporting loss of revenue. We see the ratings of shows drop. The recent Skeleton Crew was an excellent example of this, I think, because Star Wars, that's just a title that sells. It's Star Wars, goddammit. And yet recently, Star Wars Outlaws flopped. Star Wars Skeleton Crews flopped. Disney has managed to take one of the most famous IPs in the world and ruin it. So we're clearly doing something right. Now, whether or not they'll get the correct message from that and start making entertainment that we like, well, we'll know that in another 5 years.
So then I that's where I think it comes, where I come from is I don't want them to make new content. I just want them to burn. And which is a kind of a hard thing. And I realized that this week. I'm seeing a lot of the responses from people, and it's like, no, gatekeeping is the way. It's the only way for them to fix things. And I'm saying let go of the things entirely. I mean, and actually, I want to ask you this. You just said you were working on your own game. What's the inspiration for that?
Well, my idea was, because I've been in Grim Dark for a very long time with 40K, right? So I like Grim Dark, but I started asking questions as to what Grimdark really was, and the answer is kind of disappointing, because Grimdark essentially boils down to everything sucks. And the moment you make things suck less, you kind of start undermining the Grimdark. You start chipping away at the core of it, which is what GW is currently doing, trying to turn it into Hope Punk or something.
Right.
And then I compared this to Tolkien's world, right? Why is Tolkien's world so rich? Well, because it doesn't define itself by a single thing, like everything sucks, Grimdark, or everything is fantastical, kind of like Star Wars, more like fantasy science fiction. Tolkien talks about cultures. It talks about grander ideals and ideologies and spirits of something more elevated. And so that's what I am trying to do. I'm starting with the philosophical foundations of the factions and then building them out from there. Because then you immediately have the answer to a lot of questions. What would the civilization do in this scenario? Well, I know what their fundamental philosophy is. I can therefore extrapolate what they would do, like their values on life, their economic policy, their view on other species, and so on. And hopefully I'm onto something. We'll see.
So I really like that that's where you're coming at it from. I did a game. I started writing my game in 2023 after the whole open gaming license situation with Wizards of the Coast. That's a nightmare.
And you know they're going to try again. You know they're going to try again.
Oh my gosh, they're itching. They're itching to try it right now. They're itching. It's going to happen. I realized that was between Star Wars and really that was kind of the tipping point for me. I started writing a game then. We dropped it last summer. So it's been pretty good. And I think what my intent was, I spent so much time in the left side of the D&D TikTok world that I learned something from these people. They want to just when it comes to the RPG games, a player wants to take that and run with it. And sometimes that means telling their own story and forging their own paths. And so to have having your game being like, well, here's the world, you exist in it. My side of putting this out there is you make the world what you make it. Like, who are you, the person? And then the world kind of shapes around you. So it's a very different philosophy, but in and of itself, it's still storytelling. It's still positive storytelling that gives people the ability to empathize with characters. And that's where I've really learned, because I haven't spent as much time in this side of YouTube, especially. There's a lot of how do I understand who this person is, the individuality of it, and there's a lot of that on the left side of the D&D space. I understand it. I can empathize with it. It's interesting. I don't agree with a lot of the things that they try to push and they try to change. That's, as we've been talking about, they very much take it too far. But the idea of getting to understand who people are is always interesting to me. So I'm glad that because that's what we need to do. We need people who can make more games. That's what I think should happen. Let these companies collapse. We need to be able to make more stuff. That's the only way they're going to have to get better, is if there's more people learning how to be creative. There's more people learning how to tell stories. Like, that's it. I think the corporations are the bad guys, and we just got to fight back.
Well, then we'll get new corporations, though, eventually.
And the cycle repeats itself.
And see, one of the annoying things, though, is that there used to be far more levity amongst the corporations. Like, there used to be cooperation. Like, you'd have guest star appearances. Like, Warhammer has Lord of the Rings characters in it. Like, Marvel and DC would do stuff together. Star Wars would do stuff with other things. You'd have Batman in the Judge Dredd universe. Nobody does this anymore because everyone is so obsessed with having their own piece of the pie. They're like, I want my pie. Nobody else gets to have my pie.
Right.
This also leads to the destruction of the passion for it, because you're not doing it because it's fun or interesting anymore. You're doing it because pie must grow larger, more money.
Right. And it's all about getting more money every time we report how much money we've gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just destroying the culture. I had an analogy in a video a couple days ago, and I think I'm going to start saying it more often. My fear is that 2 or 3 generations from now, you're going to have normie parents who tell their children Rings of Power was an authentic Tolkien adaptation because they won't know any better.
Oh my God, I hope not.
That's a scary thought, but it's a real thought. Tell me it's not a real thought. It's like, well, Rings of Power, they're going to keep going. It's like, okay, well, that I kind of want to know, how do we gatekeep them to stop? That's my question to you. Like, how do we, if gatekeeping is the way, then how do we prevent Rings of Power from becoming what normies say is authentic? Because when we're gone, that's what people are going to say, and they won't know any different.
Well, that is what they tried to do. I'm sure you saw the little English Lord of the Rings books, right? They had been given new covers by Amazon from the Rings of Power series.
Right. Yep.
The intent of Amazon with Rings of Power was to seize the Lord of the Rings. It was to move in at an early point and go like, we're going to define this now. We're going to make our characters. Because then they could start expanding into different timelines. And if the Tolkien estate objected, they would go like, oh, no, but we're not doing Tolkien's character. We're doing Amazon's Rings of Power characters, you see now. Thank God that flopped, and it is an increasingly large economic disaster.
Yeah.
But Amazon absolutely intended to basically conquer Lord of the Rings and make it so that, as you say, in 50 years' time, people would go like, oh yeah, the Lord of the Rings started when that weird little elf chick beat up that other guy.
Yeah. There are no... have you seen any of Rings? Have you watched Rings of Power?
I have, unfortunately.
Every episode is worse than the one before it. It keeps getting worse, and I'm like, it's got to get better. It's going to remain bad. The values in that show is one of the many reasons why I say storytelling is what's under attack. I mean, you've got characters in this show taken from an adaptation of legacy books that defined fantasy for a long time. Like, when you think of fantasy, you think of the Lord of the Rings aesthetic. Whether it's Peter Jackson or the books, that's what you think of.
Yes.
And now this show has tried to completely undermine that in the sense of everything that... Galadriel is a villain. Fundamentally, from conventional storytelling, Galadriel is a villain in the context of this show, completely going against what the king wants to do, making rash decisions that get her people killed constantly, even getting the orcs killed. You want to be empathetic to the orcs for a minute? Like, she's getting the orcs killed like crazy. She's the reason there's all this conflict and pain. But like, Amazon wants you to think that everything she does is great. That's bad. And people are going to see that and not be, and they're going to think that that's heroic values now. That's what scares me.
I think innately humans understand that that's not the case. I think that's explains some of the unpopularity of it, because they don't know how to write female characters anymore. And this is endemic in entertainment, from Galadriel to Harley Quinn, all throughout. Like even Harley Quinn has a TV show that I'm currently writing a script for, and they've done something very interesting with her, because Harley Quinn became a very popular character, fourth most popular DC character, massive.
Right.
But they've been struggling. How do we separate Harley Quinn from the Joker? Because we can't have her simply be a victim of a man in the current year. We got to have her be independent. But how do you do that? Because Harley Quinn's only defining characteristics is being crazy and kind of a criminal. Right. And then she's okay, but that's just the Joker. And so in the new Harley Quinn TV show, that's what they did. They just made her into the Joker. They now claim that she was never forced into the acid to change into her persona. The Joker never manipulated her. He never brainwashed her. She was never actually, insane. She was, by him, she was always just crazy. And to them, they're like, that's really empowering. She's taking back her origins. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, hold on. That makes her worse than the Joker, because the Joker has an excuse. The Joker has been screwed over by the acids. He's actually criminally insane. He can't be responsible for his horrible actions. But Harley Quinn is now.
Right.
It's again, it's idiotic. Like, they made her a villain, and they don't even recognize it.
But if we look around at all the people that love that shit, they're lapping it up. They're starting to believe they believe that that's great, that is empowering. And that's my thought is like, okay, well, we have the ability to fight back right now. And so what do we have to do to stop that? Because Star Wars,
I guess.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, you look at people are like, oh, well, in 10 years they're gonna love the sequels, the Star Wars sequels.
I don't. That's
That's terrifying to even consider that that's a possibility. Those are objectively horrible stories, in every possible way.
I don't think so, because the prequels, they use the prequels, the Star Wars prequels, as the example for this, right? Oh, but the people have rehabilitated the prequels. Yeah, but the thing is, back then when the prequels were released, we were used to such amazing entertainment. Our standards were so fucking high that shows that would be considered great today were just mediocre back then. It's like, meh. And the prequels aren't bad. They're Star Wars movies, if nothing else. And George Lucas flubbed the storytelling. Like, he should have focused more on the politics of Palpatine, which is incredibly interesting, and less on that weird romance.
Right.
But
those were
not. Yeah, those were not terrible movies, and that's why they were, rehabilitated. Rings of Power is just bad.
Right. That's if you go. I spent a lot of time working with Comic-Cons through work, so we did a lot of consulting with the conventions. And I just remember you stand on these lines, or you stand nearby, you watch the people that are here, they come in the cosplays, and that's all great. I'm glad they have fun. You talk with them, and they think that these modern day stories are it. And they think that it's good. And so if they think that it's good, it's going to take people like you and I mobilizing a proper, well, what's the reaction to that? And so that's really where I come at you. Is like, is gatekeeping the word, and how do we How do you make that into the retaliation? And then what does that exactly look like? How do we do it? And I said this in the video, and I said it in passing, and it was more or less a joke. I was like, well, yeah, you just sound like a dickhead if you're being mean to the individual. I want to cripple the corporation. So, so that's where I should have been clearer, and I completely agreed with that, with your points. How do we stop that, and how do we save because when we're gone, what's left? What, Rings of Power, the Harley Quinn show, Velma? Oh, we're leaving Velma behind. Oh, I'm proud of Velma.
I think this is like step 2, because right now we're in a struggle. Like, we have to defend ourselves basically and beat down the people who are attacking us. Once that is done, the hope is that we can return to the open period where you were just like excited to have new people into your hobby. Because then you can tell these people about these things. Because this happened in gaming too, where I encounter people who are playing the new Total War games. And I'm like, okay, but Medieval 2 was way better. And they play it and they're like, holy shit, this is way better. Right. Once the friendliness can return, people can meet the new person who's like, 20 or something, and go, oh, Rings of Power is really great. Brother, let me show you the original movies. And they are probably then going to watch that and go, holy shit, that was way better.
Yeah. I hope there's enough of that. It's like I have some friends who are normies, as we all do. And they're like, oh, I was watching this Rings of Power and I kind of wanted more from that ending of season 2. Should I read the books? I heard that I should read the Silmarillion at work, and I'm like, no. Nope. Don't start with that. Oh, good Lord. Read The Hobbit if you need to read something, but, go watch the Peter Jackson films and take it from there. Yeah. But what happens when we're not there to say that?
Well, hopefully we will have indoctrinated the new generation by then. And hopefully something new and good has come out, because there are now long since forgotten things, because everything will be forgotten in the end. Like our oldie goldies, like the Lord of the Rings, right? But if you go back further than that, you've got stuff like Isaac Asimov's stuff too. The iRobot series is brilliant. Caves of Steel is excellent. Starship Troopers. There are countless of these really great novels that nobody really knows about. Right. The Cryptonomicon is one of my favorites. It's such an amazingly good book. They butchered it in a movie. Absolutely fucking murdered it. iRobot too, because Will Smith made a movie about that. Will Smith is the death of books. He really is.
That iRobot, if you know nothing, that movie's great. Like, yes. For the time. At the time, if you saw that in theater, I saw it when I was a kid. I saw that in theaters, but then, you get older and you're like, oh, there was a lot more there that we did not get.
Oh, yeah. Like, iRobot is the perfect example of, like, Rings of Power contra the actual Lord of the Rings movies, right, for the new generation. Because you watch iRobot and you're like, that was pretty cool. And then if you happen across Isaac Asimov's original book, you go, where the fuck was all of this? This is a completely different and much better story.
This is, this plays into, I have a video that I've been working on for like 3 weeks, and I just haven't gotten the right way to describe it, but like to properly script it out. Adaptations are killing storytelling. I think that's a big part of it. I think the adaptations that we live in, and whether it be video games or especially movies, like with every single adaptation, they get worse. And it feels like that's contributing to being part of the problem. It's like if they can't tell their own story. I mean, look, remember that Bros movie from a couple years ago? It was the gay romance movie for like Valentine's Day from like 2 or 3 years ago. Colossal bomb at the box office. And so when you look at that, it's like, well, here are people that brought in their own ideology to make their own film, and like power to them, but they spent a fortune on the budget and they overblew the budget, and then people didn't watch the movie. And then they were mad about that. So a lot of people say, well, why do they keep changing characters? It's like, because their own ideological products don't sell.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Because as a person, you obviously want to reach the largest market. That's natural, right? So these people are like, well, I want to write a movie about two gay dudes. Okay. Go ahead. And they do. And it appeals to precisely the demographic that it should. A very small percentage of people who want to watch a romance movie about two gay dudes. And then they're upset. It's like, wait, this doesn't have universal appeal? No. Why did you think it would? But then they think, but what if we could put this in a major thing? What if we could do our gay storyline in DC? What if we could make Superman gay? And then they do.
Yeah, Sauron and Celebrimbor were actually, that was a romance there in Rings of Power. Did you know that? Because that's what they want to push. That's what they wanted us to believe. I didn't see it. Or maybe I was avoiding seeing it.
I hope so.
But I think, and maybe that's another part of it. Maybe that's another segment of where the problems are stemming from is the adaptation. Constant adaptations. Even Nosferatu. We just got Nosferatu in 2024. I saw it. I liked it. I enjoyed it. The further I get away from that movie, the more I'm like, I could have went my whole life without that. I don't feel like it was good. But now everybody else that doesn't know the history associated with it are taking that and being like, well, that's the beginning point for this story. That's the first time and the only time they're going to actually meet Nosferatu when there's actual history before that, and you connect it to Dracula or whatnot, whether or not you want to. But I think that's part of the problem.
Yes. I remember reading Bram Stoker's original Dracula. And I was not supposed to be reading it. My grandmother bought this book for me because it had a pretty color and she couldn't read the English words on it. So she's like, well, that looks like a lovely book. So I'm reading this at like 12 and reading the very erotic scenes of a blood sucking. It's like, holy shit, what the fuck is this?
And right then, a star was born.
And like that stuff, that is inspired. Like, I don't think there will ever be a book that can make me feel that sense of dread that Bram Stoker's Dracula did the first time. Like, that is a spooky fucking book on so many levels.
Right. And we lose that with every adaptation that comes after it.
Yep. It gets lesser.
So I think, there's a lot here. I do want to just stay on this gatekeeping point and wrap that all up. And if we can, if it's cool with you, Arch, maybe we open up Q&A. If anybody in chat, if you want to start dropping your questions, if you have any, we'll go through and answer a handful of them with the time we've got left. But I think, you did a response video on me. I appreciate the video. I think it was well to see that I was talking without bringing the full picture of what I was trying to say. So I appreciate that very much. I do think we agree mostly when it comes to the gatekeeping aspect. I think it comes down to what what we all need to start doing is defining how do we do it. So I don't know. Would that be wrong?
Well, the definition part is always difficult. For me, I just like the broad one of attempt to change culture. It's loose, it's fluffy, it's not very well defined, but it suits the purpose of what I think we need to try and do. And we don't get lost in the weeds on it. But as, again, the power on our side grows larger, we are going to have to try to figure out more specifics, because there is absolutely a danger of more zealous followers adopting the idea of gatekeeping too harshly, by inventing their own exacting standards and going like, if you can't recite the appendices from volume 5 of this comic book, you're not a fan, etc. Possibly.
Right. And I think that's where we need to be able to, I don't know, check ourselves. We got to be able to check ourselves if it does get too far, because that's the last thing I think we really want. My motivation for even doing this channel was because I saw The Acolyte and I was fed up. So I did the D&D TikTok stuff, and I was doing the content creation there. I did a show on LawTube with my lawyer friends, the guys who covered the Johnny Depp trial. We did a really fun Lawyers and Dragons, 2 seasons of that. But then after that, I was kind of done. And then the Acolyte came out, and I said, "Oh, screw it! I'm going. I'm ready to salt the damn earth now." Now that's it. If people know me as the cancel Disney Plus guy, I'm happy. And it's like, I want people to learn how to be creative. I want people to learn how to tell stories on their own, because we can't rely on the corporations that used to steward this to do it for us. And I could look at that from any political standard at all. It's bad. Like it's just bad. Whether it has left or right leaning ideology in it, it's like, this is terrible storytelling where the values in it are antithetical to what makes human beings good. It's antithetical to goodness. I feel like too many people know that there's a problem, but they don't know how to put their finger on what the problem is. And if we can isolate a target, whether it be canceling Disney Plus or stop buying from Games Workshop or stop buying from Hasbro, depending on what your target is, I think that might be the best way to maybe mobilize people in a positive direction. But I think that's where I'm coming from with this.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that, you want to look at some questions?
Sure, absolutely.
Let's do that. Let's see. What are you guys saying here? There was one here. Let me bounce back up. All right. That's because I'm all the way at the top. Where was it? Unless I'm not seeing the starred question. All right, we'll do the super chats first, then I'll come in here. For the mods, if you want to drop the actual questions in the private, I'll pull them right from there, because StreamYard is not showing me everything that I'm seeing on YouTube. All right, so here we go. Ministry of Wrong Thing for $5. Jesus Christ, what is that picture? That's a show. That's what is that? The King of Queens? All right, for the love of God, please actually have a constructive conversation, guys. We already have enough unnecessary civil wars on our side now. I don't know, Arch, do you think we're cutting each other's heads off?
I don't think so. I think this has been productive and friendly.
I don't know. I don't know, guys. You let me know if Arch makes a video cutting my head off after this, then that'll be it. But I know I'm not. I'm hoping that this is probably going to be the last time I talk about gatekeeping for a long time. Mr. Wicker for a 5 Canadian. 2 of my favorite creators, awesome. Also, I need that wizard hat. Wait for Halloween. Get it at Spirit Halloween, just like me. From Aaron here, Cappy, good to see you, my man. I really loved your video that you did on me. I hope you're hanging around to see this. Glad you stuck around. I did, and Arch ain't rolling his R's enough. I don't know. Arch, Cappy's coming for you.
I should try harder.
We need to be. That's what we need to do. We got to try hard. All right. Here's a good one. I don't know if I could pull it up here, but here. This is from L. Bob Ross. How you call out the ones that want to break the gates? That's the question I was looking for, and I couldn't find it. Thank you, mods. Arch, how do we call out the ones who want to break the gates? What's the best way to do it?
Well, honestly, largely right now, ignoring them, because we've already gained the cultural momentum. We are now talking to people rather than them. Because you can't really talk to them. You can go like, oh, hey, you shouldn't do this. And they're like, watch me, because we tried the whole debate thing. So now we are just talking directly to the audience. And if they go like, oh, hey, we got to bring in politics into our setting, and everybody else turns on them and goes, no, then we have successfully kept them out. It's embracing the idea that the politics is always the 2% arguing over the 98. If we can shut them out from the 98, we'll have largely won. And debates, as much as I love the idea of debates, they just don't seem functional for this. Like, when two people who are both set in their positions talk, they rarely change much, if it's anything at all.
It's like we were talking about this before we went live. It's the idea of debates in this current setting. It seems like it's just, how can I collect a scalp? I'm going to make you look as stupid as possible, because that's the objective. It's not the idea of talking about the idea. It's just, how can I win? And I would agree. There's a lot of people, but there's a lot of people everywhere that just want to do that. And content creators are, well, that's their currency, it seems, these days. How do we cut each other's heads off to get a couple extra followers from clout? And
yes.
That's the hard part. That's the hard part when it comes to debate. But, like, how do you call out the ones who want to break the gates? Understand why. That's what I want to know. Why? And then break down those questions, and then disassociate from those people if they go too far.
You could go in depth and like actually debate them, and half of the time they won't even understand why they're doing it, because this is something I've experienced as well. In many cases, people could be well-meaning. They go like, "Oh, well, I just don't want the setting to be racist." Okay, how is the setting racist? And they'll struggle a little bit, like, "Well, there's too many white people." Like, okay, but how is that racist? Are white people inherently just a racist problem? If you begin to bury down, most of them will begin to see the flaws within their logic. But the problem with this is, whenever a human being starts seeing an error in its ideology, the first response isn't, "Oh, that doesn't make sense. I'll change my mind." No, the first response is, "Bunker. No, I know I'm right. You can't be right. No." Which is, again, why debates is often not very useful.
It's much harder to have, especially when... And it definitely comes down to, especially when I've had conversations with people in the D&D sphere, it's like, you can't ask questions that could poke holes in the ideology.
People naturally get defensive of these things.
Right. They naturally get defensive, and then they use, we see a lot of ad hominem attacks and tossing pejoratives, because that's easier than actually having a rational discussion on ideas. I said it in my video. I say it on stream all the time. To ask questions is to pursue truth, and we're not asking enough questions anymore. Just as a people. Very good question. Thank you for that. Here we go. This is Arch. Are you familiar with the Draka series? Really interesting military dystopia. Are you into that?
I can't say I've ever heard of it. No.
I have not either. The Draka series. That sounds new to me. That's new. But all right, I think those are the two we got. If there's any other questions that on this gatekeeping topic, you want to drop them in here, that would be great. Otherwise, we're going to start to wrap things up. Arch, any final thoughts before we close the show out?
I'm happy we did this. I think this was a very good conversation.
I think so too. This was great.
Friendly and productive.
Yeah, I think this was good. This was good for us, and I'm hoping. I hope, and this is my. I've got that heart that gets stabbed all the time. I'm hoping other people can see this and learn from what we've done. Like, we had two polarizing videos that we disagreed with each other, but we're still able to talk about these ideas. So, and not come in looking for a war, which has been fun. Like, that's really comforting that it is possible. So I don't know, push other creators that you watch to do the same thing. We shouldn't be slinging mud all the time. There were some people out here, even in the pre-show, who were like, I hope you guys aren't gonna fight. And I'm like, I don't think we will. But Arch, I think that's gonna wrap it up for us here. We did get all the super chats. Everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us for this very special Sunday Wizardry. If you haven't hit the like button here, we are probably both of us going to be posting this. It's in some other places. I believe Arch is going to post the discussion on his channel. I will be posting it as a regular video probably later today. For those of you who haven't been here before, one of my strategies with lives is that I set them to members only, but all of my live streams are available for free over on Fake Wizard Streams, which is another channel that's more of an archive for all of my streams. Yeah, Arch, I don't know if you have this problem, but all of my live streams are treated like videos after I'm done streaming, and then it cripples my regular video views. I don't know if you've had that problem, but I definitely have.
I think it separates into the live tab now, but the problem with YouTube is that it currently absolutely despises streams.
Right.
And streaming does terrible things for your view metrics and your recommended metrics, which is dumb.
Yeah.
Because it's also the best way to earn money, so...
Right. For the platform, too. So, guys, that's going to tie it up here. Thank you so much for joining us on this Sunday afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. I will be on later today. I have another stream tonight on Sammy Three Pete's other news. I'll be over there. Also, new videos coming soon. Arch, anything coming up? Anything exciting?
Hopefully I'll finally finish recording that goddamn Harley Quinn video.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing that too. All right, everybody, that's going to tie us up here. We'll see you next time. Until then, create, innovate, inspire, and for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus.